Hi folks, today I'm going to be reviewing my Grandio Summit greenhouse from Grandio Greenhouses. This greenhouse is 12 foot wide by 16 feet long, and we have it on a wooden base which raises it up a little bit, so the interior of our ceiling is about 10.5 feet tall. It's just right around 10 foot tall without a raised base. So before we start touring the greenhouse and all the gadgetry that I've put in there to make it what I call my robot greenhouse, because it is fully automated, I have to show you a couple of little things first that have to do with the greenhouse. Before we do, if you'll notice, the garden is half greenhouse and half open garden. That used to be just a fully open garden. And I have on this deck, now excuse my shaking while I walk around and my hands are not very steady, but I'll try to keep it as steady as I can. So under this deck, I have a 350-gallon water tank. Got a screen in there to keep any debris from getting in the lines. That tank is fed by the gutters on the house. One decent rain, it doesn't even have to be a torrential downpour, just a decent rain will fill that tank. So it used to be, up on the deck, I have a plug going to this pump that's connected to this tank. I could just come out, plug it in, and it would automatically water the garden. Now I wanted to incorporate that system into our greenhouse and have it serve multiple purposes. So before I get to telling you all of that, we'll look at some other things here. Now, if you notice, this has a barn-shaped roof. It gives you a lot more growing room than a greenhouse that's got a pyramid-shaped roof. If you want to grow tall stuff in this, you can. It gives you more room toward the edges of the greenhouse for growing. If it was just a triangulated roof, you'd be losing a lot of growing space in there. Okay, so as I said, that tank comes down here. Now, if you see this, you notice this valve right here. That is my lowest point for everything water related. So in the wintertime, I can just open that valve and drain the whole system so the pipes don't burst in the winter. The second valve is the valve that comes from the big tank under the deck and feeds this area going out here, and I'll show you all that in a minute. One thing you might want to notice, I have wrap on all this piping. That's not for the winter and to help the pipes from bursting, because I can drain my system. There won't be any water in it. What that is protection from the sunlight. PVC in direct sunlight, after just a couple years, will get very brittle, and the slightest movement can break the pipe. So you want to make sure you protect your PVC piping from the sunlight. Do whatever you have to do to do that. Also notice this. I have anchors going from the top part of the greenhouse wall to either fence posts or concrete pillars under the ground. I don't care how well the base of any greenhouse is attached to the ground. The top part of it, during a very strong wind, will want to move. If you don't anchor your greenhouse up high, well, a very strong wind can give you a greenhouse that's scattered all over your yard. If you anchor the top as well as the bottom, it's not going to go anywhere. We had major storms come through here last night. We had 65-mile-an-hour winds, and this greenhouse held up. And I'm going to tell you from all the research I did before I bought this greenhouse, most of the other companies out there, they're not going to withstand that kind of wind. You're going to, you get what you pay for. There are cheaper greenhouses. Yes, that's true. But are they going to stand up? Are they going to be there in 10 years? I seriously doubt it. Grandio uses 10 mil thick double-walled polycarbonate panels. Most of the other places are 4 to 6 mil thick. The other thing I've done is I've siliconed around every panel. There's a couple places on this greenhouse you definitely want a silicone. Some people say, oh, you don't need to silicone all your panels. Well, I disagree with that. It's not just for water and air leakage. Putting silicone around all your panels gives the whole structure more strength. If wind is blowing against a polycarbonate panel at 50 miles an hour, it could bow that panel. The channels on either side of your panel that hold it in place are only about 3/8 of an inch. So if the panel bows enough, it can push out. And once that happens, if you have an open panel and the wind is blowing in there, it's creating a lot of static pressure inside your greenhouse. It's going to want to rip apart your greenhouse. Do some research. You'll see it all over the internet, all over people's reviews, that my greenhouse blew all over the yard, blah, 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 blah. That's why I siliconed everything. Okay, so let's get to tour this a little bit. As you can see, we've got the Grandio logo. It's a logo this company should be proud of, and I'm going to tell you why. They, first of all, have a much sturdier design than most of the greenhouses. And if you call Grandio greenhouses, anyone that picks up the phone there is going to actually know what they're talking about. How many times have we called customer service for any place, and you get somebody in Taiwan or some other place that's reading off a screen that knows absolutely nothing about the product? How are they supposed to give you customer service if they don't know what they're talking about? I bought this greenhouse from Angela at Grandio Greenhouses. I've spoken with her many times. She's extremely friendly and very informative. So the gist of it is, if you have a question, you can call them and you're going to get a real person on the phone that actually knows what they're talking about. All right, let's go inside. Give you a shot of the inside here real quick. As you see those two bars coming down, they're actually fence post material. I added that because we do get snows here. Tennessee, you know, we have mild winters, but there are occasions where we get a foot of snow. There are occasions where we get temperatures in the single digits. This can handle, if 2-3 feet of snow fell up there, I would be confident my greenhouse would not collapse. Those bars go down, they're attached to the shelves, which of course is going right to the ground. So I can actually hang off those bars and it doesn't move my greenhouse at all. And I'm 210 pounds, so I think that added structure is something that you might want to do if you're getting a larger size greenhouse, just to be safe. I tend to over-engineer everything because I don't want to have to rebuild anything. I want to build it once, I want it done right, and I want it to last. Okay, so we come to the back of the greenhouse. Put in a sink. I've put in a workbench. Got a kerosene heater in here. If I want to grow year-round, and we get into those single digits, well, at nighttime, you got to keep it warm. So, if you have a kerosene heater, you can pull it out to the middle of your greenhouse, light it up, holds enough fuel to burn for about a day and a half. Understand that if you get one of these, you can only use clean burning kerosene that's intended for heaters. If you use regular kerosene, you're going to get so much soot, you will regret it. And the fumes may be toxic to your plants. I'm not sure about that, but it certainly makes sense. And for those of you that have experience in any of this construction or the heater or any of that stuff, I know I might sound redundant, but I'm making this video for everyone, including people that know absolutely nothing about construction. Okay, so I also have, as I said, this is fully automated. I have here a water timer. This runs on batteries. It works very well. It's a valve, basically, an on-off switch. And you can set it to come on as often as you like and you could set it to run for however long you want it to run. All drip irrigation systems require no more than 25 psi pressure. So they have what comes with drip irrigation systems is called a pressure reducing component, and you know, you'll get it if you buy a drip irrigation system. It'll come with it. And the reason that is, okay, in my case, if you see behind here, I have a pump. This is a 12-volt water pump, the same type of pump that you have in an RV. And it's an on-demand pump. So when you turn on the faucet, the pump comes on automatically. When you turn off the faucet, the pump will reach its pressure and then turn off. Usually that pressure is 50-55 pounds. That's why you need the pressure reducer on here. Otherwise, if 55 pounds of pressure goes into your drip irrigation system, it's going to blow it all apart. Okay, so this is all run by 12 volt. It's all run by solar power. And we'll get to more of that in a moment. So the drip irrigation system comes up. As you can see, it goes all through the greenhouse. The main line travels around, as you can see. And from that main line are drip tubes. I have a drip tube in every single planter in this greenhouse. Now, we just put our seeds in about a week and a half ago, and we're just now starting to get sprouts. But in another week or two, this will be full of plants. This greenhouse also comes with 8 windows. Now, these windows have pistons on them. These pistons work thermostatically. So, when it gets below 70 degrees, the windows close automatically. As it warms up during the day, the windows open by themselves, creating a nice ventilation in the greenhouse. You don't want your plants to get too hot, obviously. And they will open. It's not just we're open, we're shut. It opens according to temperature, nice and slow, so the warmer it gets, the more they open. Right now, they're still not even fully open. And when it cools down at night or whatever, they close automatically. So that's another thing that's automated. I also have lighting in here. This is not for grow lights. This is just lights so that I can see at night. I have 2 lights, which are also run by their own solar panel. There it is right there. It's inside the greenhouse, and that's fine. It gets plenty of sunlight. It charges these lights very well. These lights come with a remote control. They change colors. I got them on Amazon. Do your research. You can find, whatever you want. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you is we have the greenhouse on a wooden base, as you can see. Now, the reason we did that is because we put the greenhouse on patio block. And this patio block has a slight pitch toward the back. We did that on purpose so that if I want to spray off the floor, because I've gotten dirt all over it or whatever, you'll see I have a sprayer here. This sprayer is long enough to go throughout the whole greenhouse. I can manually water the plants if I don't want to use the automatic watering, or I can spray the floor down. And as the water is running off of these patio blocks, it's running toward the back and down under, watering the asparagus we have behind the greenhouse. The other purpose these blocks serve in the south, or, well, almost anywhere, in August, it could get too hot in the greenhouse, even with the windows wide open. It's possible for it to get too hot or hot enough to damage your plants. So in an emergency situation, I can take that sprayer and spray down this patio block. Patio block is very porous cement, and it evaporates water out of it quickly. Well, as anyone knows about air conditioning works by evaporating water. So it'll evaporate out of here quickly, and it cools the greenhouse down instantly. So I have a protection if it ever gets way too hot. It acts like air conditioning. The other thing I did to make sure it never gets too hot in here is I put in this fan. This is a 12-volt fan like you would see on the roof of an RV. This fan comes on thermostatically. When it gets to 78 degrees in here on this side of the greenhouse, then it will turn on. Know that there will be variances in temperature in your greenhouse. That back wall I'm showing you right now can be 95 degrees whilst this fan is at 78. So the other thing about this fan is it can pull air in or push air out, whichever way you set it. And there's a lid on it that with a crank that, you close it in the wintertime, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we've done for irrigation, well, partially the irrigation system and the cooling and heating. Now, as you'll see, there's plenty of bracing throughout this greenhouse. Grandio builds probably what I would say the best greenhouse for the buck. As I said before, yes, you can get a cheaper greenhouse. Is it going to stand there in 10 years? I don't think so. So let's go to the back of the greenhouse and I'll show you some of the other things I've done here. Now, when I want to water this open part of the garden, as I said, I had the big tank that's under the deck comes out here, and I can open a valve, and there are sprinkler heads here that comes off the big tank under the deck and waters this whole area, waters it very well. As I said, it's all solar driven. One good sized solar panel with a 12-volt battery inside the greenhouse, and you're set. It runs everything. It does a very good job. Now we have back here another tank. This one's 210 gallons. This one collects the rainwater that comes off the roof of the greenhouse. As you can see, there are tubes coming down from the greenhouse gutters that go into this. The other pipe that comes into this is coming from the large tank under the deck. So, if for some reason we have used all the water in this small tank due to drought or whatever, I can open this valve and fill this small tank with the big tank that's under the deck. So I have, let's see, 350, 205, I have 560 gallons of water storage capability. Now, if I want to run the sprinkler to water the open garden, well, that's what this is all for. I have the valve in the front of the greenhouse. I also have one here in case I want to turn that off for some reason. And that goes out, as you see, to where those sprinkler heads are that I showed you. There's one short note I want to tell you about water tanks. If you have a water tank coming off your gut or being fed by your gutters, there are two things you're going to want to do. One is you're going to want to make sure you have a drain at the bottom of that tank. So in the wintertime, you can drain it out. The other thing is, if your tank is closed, like this one is, you need to have an overflow tube. Put it up as high as you can on the tank, because if you have a closed tank and it's full and you get rains, well, that's going to make your gutters back up and start leaking and everything. So you need to have some type of overflow tube. Now, there's a valve here that feeds the 12-volt water pump that's inside the greenhouse. This other valve is to feed these watering pipes. Now, we don't have anything growing in these yet except weeds. We're about to plant stuff in there. This is set up, doesn't need a pressurized pump or anything. I just have it set up so that if this tank is at least half full, all I have to do is open that valve and gravity will water these. I don't intend on having to water these very much. But it's there. If they need it during drought, I can do that as well. So, we'll go back out over here. Now let me tell you one of the things as far as the silicone goes. When you're building this greenhouse, you're going to be putting these side panels on first. Then your roof panels, okay? Now, in this channel right here, and the top of these polycarbonate panels, you definitely want to fill that top with silicone. I use black RTV because it's better than just regular clear silicone. RTV silicone is better silicone. It adheres better. Because if you don't do that, when you put up your greenhouse, water that's coming from the roof panel could go behind the gutter and start filling up those channels. You don't want to have that happening. I also put silicone along here. So that takes care of that. The other thing is, like I said, I siliconed everything because I wanted that added structural strength. So that's kind of about our whole system. I just want to say a couple more quick little things. If you do research for a greenhouse, you're going to see lots of companies selling them. I won't name any of them. I will tell you that almost all of them are selling greenhouses that are much more flimsy than the Grandio greenhouse. And I don't care what model of Grandio you get, it's going to be sturdier. Now, we bought the Grandio Summit Premium package, which gives you lots of extra bracing inside and so forth. I've seen greenhouses that have about the same footprint as this go anywhere from $3,000 to one that was really super nice, that was $17,000, which to me is just ridiculous. You know, who can just blow 17 grand cash on a greenhouse? Not a lot of people. If you buy one of the cheap ones, I can just about guarantee you're not going to be happy. Grandio, in my opinion, gives you the best bang for the buck. This greenhouse, now this is just the greenhouse, not any of the other things I did to it, was just under $6,000 for the Summit Premium package. Well worth the extra $1,500 or so you're going to spend than buying one of those cheap ones from the other companies. And here's a couple little hints. And I don't care what company you're dealing with. When you're building your greenhouse, you have to remember a couple of things. First two most important things. Your base, your foundation, needs to be perfectly level and perfectly square. If it isn't, when you start putting up your greenhouse, your polycarbonate panels are not going to line up right in their tracks, and you're going to be starting over. The other thing you need to remember building any of these greenhouses, you will have one full day of pre-assembly. And pre-assembly means building your front wall, building your back wall. You're going to want to do that on a flat, level surface so that everything lines up perfectly. You will pre-assemble everything you can pre-assemble for your greenhouse before you start putting it up. Once you start putting it up, you need to remember that you just don't want to stop until the whole basic structure is finished, is up and standing, because these structures do not get their strength until it's all tied together. If you build this and you stop halfway, the slightest wind is going to rip it apart. It's like that for all greenhouses. I don't care what quality they are. So just remember, square and level base, and get your pre-assembly done, and then once you start building, do not stop. We did a full day of pre-assembly, and then the next day we started at 9 o'clock in the morning. This was 2 people. This greenhouse is recommended to take 3 or 4 people to put up, but it was only 2 of us. We worked until 2:30 that morning. So I hope that gives anyone who's thinking about getting a greenhouse some idea of what they're getting into. If you have never done construction or are not mechanically minded, I would strongly advise getting professional help to put your greenhouse up. The other thing I really want to emphasize again is that if you buy a greenhouse from Grandio Greenhouses, you are going to get a quality product. I am very happy with this. Like I said, we had 60, 65 mile an hour winds here last night, and no problem whatsoever. And that's about all I can say. If you're going to get a greenhouse, I strongly recommend Grandio greenhouses. I strongly recommend speaking to Angela. She is extremely helpful, very pleasant. When we got this delivered, one of the boxes, it had been ripped in shipping. We all know that the shipping companies are not all that careful. The end of the box was ripped open. There was one little support bar missing and a bag of screws. I called Angela. She sent them out the next day, immediately. It was no questions asked. Boom, here you go. It's a great company. They have a high standard of doing business, one that we don't see very often these days. Thank you very much. I hope this has been informative enough for any of you considering to get a greenhouse to help you make your decisions on which direction you want to go. And thank you to Grandio Greenhouses for all their help and good work. Take care.